share with us who you are, where you're located, along with the position in the practice that you work with. First one here is Kaylin, and Kaylin, you do not have your participant code, so I can't open your phone line. Apologies there. Sharissa. And all right, Sharissa, I believe we could hear you now.
Thanks. I'm Sharissa. I am the Client Service Coordinator at Bridge North Wealth Advisors. I'm there in Fredericksburg, Texas.
Great. Thanks for the introduction. Brittany Sherman. Brittany, I just opened up your phone line.
I'm Brittany, and I work for Thornton Donahue and Associates in Dunedin, Florida as a case manager.
Thank you, Brittany. Erica Bowers. Erica, I just opened up your phone line.
Hi, I'm Erica. I'm here in Martinsburg, West Virginia. I work for John Everson's office with the Murius Group, and I'm the Client Service Manager.
Thanks, Erica. Lisa Harrison, I don't believe has had a chance to join us yet. Carla DeShazer, we were not able to get her phone line working. Carla actually is works for our practice Cornerstone Financial Group here in Southfield, Michigan. Heidi Wampler. Heidi, also I'm not able to open up your phone line. Marlo Russell. I opened up your phone line there, Marlo.
Hi, I'm Marlo, and I'm in Port Huron, Michigan, and I'm a Client Service Manager for Jeff Wallace.
Thanks, Marlo. Michelle. And Michelle, I'm going to open up your phone line because I don't want to butcher your last name. How do you say it?
My name is Michelle Hoffauer.
Thank you.
I'm in down south of San Antonio in Kennedy, Texas at Mesquite Wealth Management Group for Steve Juke's office.
Thank you so much. And lastly is Carla Doss. And Carla Doss has also not been able to join us yet, so I won't be able to open up her phone lines. I forgot to introduce myself. My name is Dawn Rem. For those of you that do not know me, I am the Director of the Practice Management team here at Key Management Group. Welcome, everyone, and thanks for participating in today's class. I am going to keep the phone lines muted. For those of you that have not participated in the class before, there will be a portion of today's class where we'll go through some polls and group discussion. At that time, I will open up the phone lines. If you have any questions, comments, or concerns during this, you're more than welcome to use the chat feature or the questions box. Peggy Ruby is here with me so that she can monitor those questions and comments as I go through today's class. So I'm going to open up the phone lines now to a gentleman named Eric Ebersol, and Eric is today's content expert. So for those of you that aren't familiar with what that means, he has been nominated by our practice management team as an expert of the topic for today, which is the meeting follow-up process. So Eric, I went ahead and opened up your phone line. Welcome. Could you share with everyone what your role looks like for the practice today and who you work for?
Sure. I'm part of Allied Wealth Advisors along with Carla Doss and Kaylin Bouchard in Lakeland, Florida. I'm a AFA for Steve Peterson. So he's a private wealth advisor. So I do a lot of the trades and transactions and kind of file prep stuff for him. But I'm just kind of one piece in the process along with Carla, Jeff, and Kaylin.
Great. Thank you so much. And Eric has played a large role in this process, meeting follow-up. In the past, more and less now. He has assistance with Kaylin and Carla. So we'll go through their process and how that looks for Allied Wealth. So Eric, I'm going to go ahead and just mute your phone line again until we get to your portion. And what is the purpose of our call today? So the tagline, it's a wrap, now what? After every client meeting, there are quite a few steps that need to happen, and we don't want to miss those pieces. We have a separate class on the client meeting outcome tracker, which tracks more of the preventing those client promises from slipping through the cracks. So today we're really going to focus more on what happens outside of just that client meeting outcome tracker. So it's important to have a consistent process in place for meeting follow-up. We all know we're, again, preventing those client promises from slipping through the cracks. All necessary business processing and tasks are being completed using specific tracking tools to remind us. Everything is properly documented, which is a step much needed for compliance purposes, and that the compensation is reviewed and received. And that's not done with all practices, and we'll get into specifics with regards to practice preferences here later in the class. So what does it mean? What is meeting follow-up or appointment follow-up? This is where you'll be completing all necessary steps after a client meeting has taken place. That includes, like Eric was saying, placing trades, completing the meeting notes, assigning tasks to appropriate people, whether that's the advisor or other staff members, not necessarily just the person that's actually taking care of this meeting follow-up. It can be everyone in the practice. We'll talk about some, as part of the group discussion, the differences in the practices that are here attending the class today. Posting and uploading the meeting notes for compliance purposes especially, submitting documents, completing the CMOT, client meeting outcome tracker for those of you that are not familiar, tracking and processing the business, and then verifying that compensation. Just a quick discussion question here, and I'll open up the phone lines for those of you that would like to participate in answering this question. Just go ahead and raise your hand. If you're not comfortable speaking, you're more than welcome to send us either a chat or a question to answer. What is the important or useful item that that you track outside of what I've already listed here? Are there any additions that I may have missed? Okay, doesn't appear so. Looks like we got all of the main points. And then how about a poll here? How does your team record meeting notes? This is a really important one, and I wanted to show you all of the differences in how meeting notes are recorded so that we can talk about it later in the class. I'll give you a second to answer that. Perfect, 100% voted. I like seeing that. So we have here 20% of you complete the meeting notes through the Connect tool, 40% directly into the SmartPad, some are using a form of dictation, and 20% other. All right, Eric, let's go through your process first before we go through some additional best practice recommendations. I went ahead and opened up your phone line. I just bulleted here, Eric and I had a chance to speak. We also work together through the team meeting, but Eric and I had a chance to speak about the process that they use. I just wanted to note before Eric discusses his process that this form of meeting follow-up is much more physical paper follow-up than some practices. So this is an idea of an option, I should say, for you as a practice if the paperless approach is not working as well. I know that's been a point for many practices to try the more paperless route of following up with everything, I should say, not just follow-up, but the case prep and follow-up. They use more of a paper approach here at Allied Wealth, and so Eric's going to share with us today how that is successful for them. So Eric, if you could just go through and share with us how the meeting follow-up looks for your practice.
Thanks, Don. So to get the advisor takes a cover sheet into the appointment that has any kind of recommendations or any kind of notes that they want to follow. That kind of serves as a place to have the advisor write any kind of changes to an account or anything. That way it's all on one kind of piece of paper, one place. And so the advisor will take any files, any meeting notes, any of that stuff back out of the meeting and give it to, we're going to put myself in that role. We'll give it to me, and I'll kind of do the meeting follow-up. So he would give it to me. I would look at the cover sheet, see if a trade needed to be placed. If there is, then I would immediately do that trade right there. I would then check off the trade showing that it's been completed. I would look to see if there are any applications. If there was an application, we have a folder, kind of a bin that we put in to be scanned. And that would be Kaylin's role. And if there's anything else that needed to be uploaded to OFM, we would put that in as well. Other than that, we would take apart the file, make sure there is no data gather kind of information, there's no insurance quotes or anything like that. And then once that's all sorted through, I would take the cover sheet and make sure there was nothing else that needed to be followed up on. If there was, I'd put it in business processing or somewhere like that. And then I would put the sheet into another kind of box or folder to be scanned by Kaylin. Once she scans the cover sheet, that way we have record of everything that's been done. She will take that cover sheet, the physical copy, and put it into Steve's basket or whoever the advisor is. That advisor is then prompted to make the meeting note. Once the meeting note has been placed, he will take that paper back and put it into Kaylin's box, and that's what prompts her to go ahead and complete CMOT for that client. And then once that's done, we go over it every week and make sure nothing kind of slipped through the cracks.
Tracking. Great. So you'll notice that what Eric was referring to is there are many, and I call them inboxes, but more for the physical form, that cover sheet's really passed around. Instead of it being an electronic tracking system like a task list or Connect, they use this physical piece of paper. It is one sheet, correct, Eric?
Yeah, it's just one sheet, and it has all the information we need.
Yeah. So that one sheet is really what they pass around to remind that next person that's responsible to go ahead and begin their portion of the follow-up. A couple of other things with Eric here, some preference pieces. Eric, you mentioned that it is most successful, so any of the follow-up for client meetings is most successful when the advisor fills in as much of the detail as possible. So not one question can be missed. You said that even if the answer is no, their cover sheet is designed specifically for them, so they know exactly what they need, which means nothing can be missed. A yes or no or any other additional detail. Anything else to expand on that part, Eric?
Yeah, one big thing for us, like you said, if it says, you know, buy $5,000 of XYZ, we make sure that there is a yes or a no, because we don't want to go ahead and do something and then, you know, the person said, oh, I forgot to mark no. So we make sure the advisor is always putting exactly what they want, and once it's done, we check it off. That way, if something were missed or something, we know kind of who was accountable and we know kind of why it got missed. So if there's a trade that said, you know, yes to the buy and there was no check mark, that means the person who received the cover sheet didn't do the trade because they missed it. Or if the advisor forgot to write yes or no or forgot to put details, then the advisor needs to be caught up with and, you know, needs to be talked to make sure that they give exactly what they want.
And Eric, do you put those trades on the business processing tracker, or do you just add those to the cover sheet?
So when we get that cover sheet, anything on there goes on business processing. If it's, a trade, then we would kind of set it out for the next day and check and make sure it got completed. If it's money movement, depending on how long it would take for those funds to process, we would, put it out for that long. But pretty much anything that is on that cover sheet is going to get put onto business processing. That way, nothing gets missed. But we have it scanned anyways. That way we can look back at it. But yeah, pretty much everything goes to the BPT.
Great. Thanks for sharing that. And then one of the other preference pieces here for Allied Wealth is with regards to the not in good order emails. Eric just expanded on that with stating that everything from that cover sheet goes on to the business processing. I shouldn't say everything, but most everything goes on the business processing tracker. So if there is an email received for not in good order, that is something that they would track using the BPT. Correct?
Yes.
Great. Anything we missed, Eric, that you'd like to add?
No, actually, not really. I think for us, the biggest thing was the more hands it's in, the less likely we are to miss something. So, the advisor is held accountable, the person taking apart the file is accountable, Kaylin's accountable for checking it through CMOT, and then we do a weekly review. So, we've got multiple ways to catch anything that falls through the cracks.
Great. Thank you so much.
Mm-hmm.
So now we'll talk about just some additions to this process that we work with you through, and that is the preference pieces as well as the visual workflow. So Eric talked about his specific practice and how they use more of that paper approach. There are multiple ways, hence the poll question, that you can capture what happened in the client meeting, whether that's physical or dictation or electronic. And from there, it also determines, or you determine the preferences for your practice by either continuing that paper approach or more of the paperless approach. We need to document that, so that's something that is not to, we don't want you to just fly by the seat of your pants and say, this is how we're going to do it, and we want you to have it documented. So the best way to do that is by using this preference document. This is just an example. It's not inclusive of all the steps for the meeting follow-up, but I wanted to show you a snapshot. In completing or updating, it helps to consider which is the best team member to complete each of these steps. In some practices, it's one person. In others, it's multiple, like Eric was explaining. It promotes consistency, especially when there are multiple team members involved in the follow-up. So we have one of these preference documents for Allied Wealth, and it reflects what Eric has described as their meeting follow-up process today. The other piece to keep documented is the workflow, the visual representation of this. So I'm going to use Eric's example today. This is not Eric's example, I should say, here on the slide. But if you were to think about the different hands that he mentioned that cover sheet passes through, we want to make sure that we have a resource for a new body that may be hired into his practice, or just memory for each individual's memory to pass it off to the correct person. So you'll note here our best practice. And this is a little bit different than what Eric explained, and I apologize if the font is too small to read. I'm going to walk you through it. Typically, the advisor completes the trades and then completes the meeting notes. So with Eric's practice, the meeting notes are actually not done until further in the process. That is another idea. But for our recommendation, we recommend that the meeting notes are completed right away. Those meeting notes then are communicated over to the preferred team member, and in this case, it is the business processor. The business processor then reviews the paperwork for accuracy and completion and passes it off to the administrator. When the business processor here reviews the application, so this is more of that paperwork, Eric referred to this in his explanation, this business processor is actually processing that business, so submitting those applications to the appropriate place before the meeting notes are then passed off to the administrator. The administrator then reviews the same meeting notes, assigning the tasks as needed. So, for instance, if the business processor submitted an SPS application, he or she may not be the one to actually add that follow-up, the task, on the business processing tracker. It may end up being the administrator. So all of the tasks, that being one of them, is assigned out on the appropriate tracker by the administrator in this example. The meeting notes are then posted to Contact Manager and or Online File Manager. I want to note here that for compliance purposes, if you do end up using solely Contact Manager, you need to make sure that you're actually copying and pasting the text into the SmartPad, not attaching the meeting notes file. If you cannot just copy and paste the text because it's a different form, maybe a PDF, and you're planning to attach, for compliance purposes, you have to attach it to Online File Manager. It does not satisfy the compliance requirement to attach it into Contact Manager only. Once that piece has been completed, the administrator completes the CMOP, the Client Meeting Outcome Tracker, and that really catches all the steps to make sure that nothing is in fact going to slip through the cracks. He or she will mark the meeting done in Contact Manager, and the reason for this is to make sure that the future group service frequency reports that are pulled will note that the meeting actually happened. That's really important. Scanning all forms and documents as needed, copies if desired for a physical client file, that happens next. Forwarding all the forms and documents other than maybe applications to the appropriate destination. You'll see here we use home office, CSU, maybe the client, if there's anything that needs to go to the client, and or third party. The administrator as well as the business processor in this instance will both be doing tracking. There are tasks that are typically assigned out to both parties, and the business processor is the one verifying the compensation. We do have a process where we recommend that you use the business processing tracker to verify that compensation, and I won't be going into that process today, but that is what's recommended here in this workflow. Lastly, if a NIGO, not in good order email, is received, it typically goes to the advisor. Some advisors that I work with have it auto-forwarded to a specific person. In this example, it should be forwarded to the business processor. So that can be done automatic or manually if that comes through, so that the business processor can take ownership in that follow-up. That, for Eric, we talked about, was then added to the business process tracker for to make sure that it does not slip through the cracks. So on to some group participation. We would love to hear from all of you, because I know there are various preference pieces with this process. This process is one of the most complex processes, I'd say, outside of preparing for the client meeting. So with some offices being 100% paperless, some still much more with using paper, I'd like to go through some of these what ifs, and if you wouldn't mind sharing your experiences. So I'll start by going through and asking you to raise your hand if it does apply to you. At that point, you may or may not want to respond. You can keep your hands raised if you are interested in sharing your process with us. We greatly appreciate it. So let's start with the first one. Does one person complete the entire meeting follow-up process in your practice? If so, go ahead and raise your hand. Don't worry, I won't call on you yet. One person. Does one person complete? So far I have one. And if you're interested in sharing with us that process, you can keep your hand raised. Otherwise, I'll go ahead and move on to another. Okay. Number 2, how has your practice customized your meeting follow-up process? So if you would please share with us, I know there are many preference pieces, and maybe you just like to share one of them that you think others would benefit from. Go ahead and raise your hand. If you're not comfortable speaking in front of the class, that's fine as well. I would still really love to hear from you so that I can share that with the class. You can go ahead and use the chat feature or the questions pane. Again, this question is with regards to any preference pieces that your office uses that other practices may benefit from with regards to meeting follow-up. Nobody wants to share, huh? I'm going to pick one person. Erica, I just opened up your phone line.
Okay.
Do you, oh, you know this. You want me to repeat the question?
Yeah, how is we've customized the follow-up process?
Yep.
I mean, not much. I mean, Phil, he sits in with John on some of the meetings. He comes out, he does the meeting notes, the trades, the CMOT. He passes it on to me. I finish the meeting notes, put them in Contact Manager, and upload them to OFM, and do a couple other things. And then Lisa, she checks the comp. We do use paper to keep track of the trades. It's what we call an action plan worksheet. So we keep track of the trades that way. Other than that,
yep. So two preference pieces I heard there. One, they have a case manager sitting in the meeting, so the advisor is not actually the one doing the meeting notes. That's a good preference piece to note. And as an option,
once in a while. Now, once in a while, John will have to do them, and if Bill runs the meeting himself, he'll do them himself. But
great. And then the other is that trade sheet. Very similar to what Eric was referring to. They just put theirs on the cover sheet. I work with a lot of practices that actually, even if they're mostly paperless, let's say 99% paperless, they still do a physical trade sheet because those are tasks that have to be done right away, so you don't have to wait for them to get into your electronic tracking system. Great. Sorry to call on you, Erica, but thank you for sharing.
Uh-huh.
How about the next question? What follow-up pieces have been the most successful or maybe unsuccessful in your practice? So if you have anything to share, either most successful or unsuccessful, maybe you've tried something in the past that did not work. Again, we'd love to hear so that others can say, well, we were thinking about trying that, but maybe it's not a good idea. Are there unsuccessful processes? All right, and then the last question here for the group. How does a meeting follow-up process work if your practice has multiple locations and or multiple advisors? So I'm going to start with this one. Michelle, I'm going to ask you a little bit more specifically now. Don't worry, Michelle, I know that you're newer, but you have a practice that has multiple locations and multiple advisors. Can you speak to any preference pieces that have helped with this process?
What are you asking? Sorry.
Sure. With regards to making sure that nothing slips through the cracks, So you have multiple advisors in multiple locations, and the steps that happen after that client meeting, can you share with the group how that happens with your practice?
We have a location in San Antonio. In San Antonio, there's a case manager that handles 3 advisors there.
Great.
Their follow-up, or he does their follow-up, or meeting notes, whatever. I mean, I'm like new, so I'm still trying to learn I know how to call clients, and that's about it.
You know that.
Here in Kennedy, we have a case manager. Well, he's a paraplanner. He takes care of one advisor here, and then in Corpus, there's one advisor in that office, and there's a case manager there that handles everything. So it's 3 different case managers.
Great.
That juggle.
Yep. That was the answer to my question. Thank you so much. Don't mean to put the pressure on being so new, but
no, that's fine.
I knew you knew that one. All right, and I believe there's one other person I saw on here that has multiple advisors in multiple locations. Well, actually, Sharissa, you are a multiple advisor practice. Can you give us the gist of?
We're multiple. Sorry.
And multiple locations.
And multiple
Right.
advisors.
Right.
I am mostly the one doing the meeting follow-up. First, our advisors initiate the meeting note. They put in their BBTs and everything, and they know who to send the follow-up to. Say if it's a trade, send it to Jay. If it's paperwork, send it to Kelly. And then I process the meeting note, get the letter ready, and I follow up with the whole process. There's no way that paper would work for us since we have multiple locations. It'd be a mess.
Yep. How do they, so you mentioned you can't use the paper, so how is that communication done between the multiple team members?
We work on using great notes, very explanatory within our BPTs mostly. So we'll say, I'll ask them to review the letter, then the advisor will send it back to me. We all just work really great in putting great notes where we know what is our next step.
Right. So that sounds similar to what Eric was talking about. They have to answer every question on their cover sheet. For you, it's detailed notes, solidifies that everyone knows what they need to do again, so that nothing slips through the cracks.
Exactly.
Great. Thank you so much for sharing.
No.
All right, so that wraps up the topic for today, short and sweet. I will be standing by for any questions. For those of you that may have been a little too shy to ask or speak up during the class, I have another 20 minutes or so for you. You can send me an email through AMPF, dawn.m.rem@ampf.com, and I'll be happy to reach out to you right now. There will be a PDF follow-up, a one-pager with today's recording and resources if you're interested, as well as a survey. If you could please take just a couple of minutes to answer that survey, we would greatly appreciate it. We're looking to increase the information and value that you receive from these classes, so we want to hear from you, please. And then don't forget that you are each other's best resources. So we go through in the beginning, though you may not want me to call on you or introduce yourself. Out in the field, you're actually doing these steps. You know, with regards to this topic today, you're doing that follow-up for the advisor to make sure that those promises they made do not slip through the cracks. Those clients are most important. So if you'd like to leverage each other, maybe you heard from one of the members today and you'd like them to expand on that process, I'd be more than happy to help set you up just by asking permission before I give out that contact information. So if you are in fact interested in that, go ahead and send me a note so that I can get you set up. Other than that, we're all set. Thank you all again for for participating, and I look forward to speaking to you in another class. Have a great day.